Courtney, that was bloody fantastic.
Thank you.
Let me tell you something, Courtney. Something has changed in you. Trust me. In the time you were on the show last year to now, your interaction with the audience, the confidence. I think this has been my favourite performance of you so far.
There is a moment that lives permanently in the memory of everyone who watched it. A 13-year-old girl from a tiny mining village in County Durham, England, walked out onto the America's Got Talent stage looking like she had been pushed there against her will. She was small. She was pale. She looked like she genuinely wanted to disappear into the floor. The audience saw a nervous child. Simon Cowell saw another audition. And then she opened her mouth. What came out of Courtney Hadwin that night in 2018 was not the voice of a 13-year-old. It was something older, rawer, and almost terrifyingly powerful. Otis Redding's Hard to Handle became, in her hands, a force of nature. The audience was on their feet before the first chorus ended. Howie Mandel slammed the golden buzzer with the look of a man who had just witnessed something he would spend the rest of his life talking about. And Simon Cowell, a man who has built an entire television career out of refusing to be moved, sat back in his chair and said something he has almost never said to anyone: "You were this shy little thing when you came out, you sing and you're like a lion." That night, Courtney Hadwin became famous. Her audition video would go on to rack up over 300 million views. The comparisons to Janis Joplin followed immediately. Headlines wrote themselves. The music industry came calling. And Simon Cowell, the man who had heard thousands of voices and signed some of the biggest names in pop history, moved fast. Shortly after the 2018 season ended, he signed Courtney to Psycho Music in partnership with Arista Records. She was 14 years old. The dream was alive. And then, quietly, almost imperceptibly, things began to fall apart. To understand what happened next, you have to understand where Courtney came from. She grew up in Heselden, a small former mining village near Hartlepool. Her father worked side jobs, including delivering pizzas, to fund her singing lessons and travel to auditions across the northeast of England. Her mother drove her to open mic nights. Her granddad walked her to local busking spots so she could earn enough for vocal coaching. There was nothing manufactured about her start. Every ounce of that voice had been earned the old-fashioned way, in cold rehearsal rooms and small-town stages, in front of people who had never heard of a golden buzzer. By the time she stood on that AGT stage, she had already competed at Teen Star UK in Newcastle, won Hartlepool's Performer of the Year award, opened for Sister Sledge in front of 18,000 people at the South Tyneside Festival, and reached the finals of The Voice Kids UK. None of that had made her famous. What made her famous was 2 minutes on American television, a golden buzzer, and a clip that went viral before the show had even finished airing. The problem with that kind of overnight visibility is that it skips every step in between. One day you are a schoolgirl from County Durham practicing scales in a local music academy. The next, you are a signed artist on one of the world's most powerful music labels, expected to produce chart-rating music on a tight deadline, flying between the United Kingdom and the United States for recording sessions, and sitting across from industry executives who have already decided, before you've said a word, exactly what kind of artist they want you to become. Courtney was 14. She had no roadmap for any of this. In interviews from that period, the signs were there if you knew how to read them. She described feeling amazing to be joining the label. She talked about wanting to write original songs and stay true to herself. She spoke the words of someone who believed, genuinely and completely, that the machine she was walking into would make space for who she actually was. It did not. What followed was the classic collision between raw talent and industrial music making. Studio sessions with multiple producers who pitched beats and hooks she didn't connect with. Songwriting meetings where her own instincts were redirected towards sounds that were safer, more marketable, easier to sell to radio. A schedule that would have been demanding for a seasoned adult professional, let alone a teenager still working out what she believed in. She later described the experience in one devastating sentence: "Everyone around me was telling me who I should be." That is not an unusual story in the music industry. What made it different in Courtney's case was the intensity with which it happened, and the age at which it hit her. She had not had years of professional experience to build psychological armor. She had not learned yet how to hold her ground in a room full of people who were older, more powerful, and absolutely certain they knew better. The voice that had stopped Simon Cowell cold, that had made Howie Mandel reach for the golden buzzer before she even finished the first verse, was being smoothed and shaped and fitted into a mold it was never made for. The social media posts began to slow. The interviews became less frequent. The public began to notice the silence and started asking questions. And behind that silence, a young woman was quietly retreating, not giving up, but reclaiming herself, looking for the version of her art that had nothing to do with what anyone else wanted from her. She found it, eventually, with the help of producer Kevin Bowe, a Grammy-winning collaborator who had worked with Etta James and Joe Cocker. These were artists who understood what it meant to carry a voice that was bigger than the room. With Bowe, Courtney began writing songs that felt like her, not polished pop-soul crossovers built in committee, but honest, raw, sometimes angry music that came directly from her experience. Songs called Monsters. Songs called You Only Love Me When I Lie. Songs called Breakable. Each title alone tells you something about what she had been through. The shift was total. She left her label, rebuilt her team, signed with new management under Oliver Mojita at Total Artist Management, and began performing again on her own terms. In April 2024, she performed at Carnegie Hall, personally selected by legendary music executive Clive Davis to open a gala with a Janis Joplin tribute. The room was full of industry veterans who had been around long enough to know real talent when they heard it. They heard it. By 2025, Courtney Hadwin, now 20 years old, was preparing to release her debut album, Little Miss Jagged, slated for September. Stripped-down live videos of her new material had already left viewers speechless. Critics described her as sounding like thunder, burning like fire. A woman who had once been told exactly who to be had found, through years of quiet work and difficult reckonings, exactly who she was. And now we come to Simon Cowell. Simon does not cry. This is, at this point, practically his brand. He is the man who has sat through thousands of auditions and delivered thousands of verdicts without ever betraying more than the occasional reluctant nod of approval. His composure is legendary. His poker face is so reliable that the rare moments when something cracks through it, like that night in 2018 when a girl from Heselden sang Otis Redding and he called her a lion, become the moments people talk about for years. So when footage began circulating in recent months, showing what appeared to be Simon Cowell breaking down in an interview while speaking about Courtney, people paid attention. The clips showed a man who seemed heavier somehow, sitting differently in his chair, pausing in a way that felt unfamiliar. According to accounts accompanying the footage, he spoke slowly. He said, "We expected too much too soon." He paused again. He said, quietly, "She was a kid. I think we failed her." And then, reportedly, his voice cracked. It must be said clearly and honestly, these clips have not been verified by reputable mainstream outlets. No major publication has independently confirmed the context or authenticity of the statements attributed to him. We do not know when they were recorded, or what the full conversation surrounding them was, or whether the words attributed to him accurately reflect what was said. This matters, and it would be wrong to present unverified footage as established fact. But here is what we do know. Simon Cowell signed a 14-year-old girl to a major record label and handed her to an industry machine that, by her own account, spent the next few years telling her who she should be rather than helping her discover who she was. He was not uniquely villainous in this. He was, in fact, simply doing what people in his position have always done, identifying talent, signing talent, and moving on to the next season. That is not malice. That is business. But business and a child's creative identity are not always compatible, and in Courtney's case, they clearly were not. If Simon did sit in that chair and say those words, if he did pause mid-interview with the weight of something he had been carrying for years, it would not be the confession of a monster. It would be the reflection of a man who was very good at recognizing talent and perhaps not sufficiently attentive to what comes after. The music industry is full of stories like Courtney's, and most of them do not end with the artist reclaiming her voice and performing at Carnegie Hall and building something real on her own terms. Most of them just end quietly. Courtney's did not end quietly. There is something worth sitting with in the specific way her comeback happened. She did not return with a slick major label rollout or a carefully managed public relations campaign. She came back with music she wrote herself, with a producer who understood her, on a timeline that was hers. She came back honest. Her songs carry the scars of what she went through, not hidden or aestheticized, but present. "You only love me when I lie" is not a vague pop metaphor. It is a direct line from experience to expression, the kind of songwriting that only happens when someone has stopped trying to please everyone else. She has also spoken openly, for the first time, about the mental and emotional cost of what she experienced. About burnout. About the loss of creative control. About the strange isolation of being surrounded by people and still feeling entirely alone. In doing so, she has joined a small but growing group of young artists who are willing to say, publicly and without softening it, that the system that is supposed to nurture talent can also devour it. That visibility and opportunity are not the same as support. That a golden buzzer is a beginning, not a guarantee. Simon Cowell remembers the 13-year-old who stood on that stage and stopped a room cold. Whether or not he has publicly reckoned with what came after, the reckoning has happened regardless, because Courtney Hadwin is still here, still singing, still writing, and building the career she always should have had, on ground she built herself. She came out onto that stage looking like she wanted to disappear. She sang like a lion. And 7 years later, after everything the industry threw at her and everything she threw back, she is still roaring. Some voices cannot be managed into silence. Courtney Hadwin's is one of them. What do you think about Courtney's journey and the pressures young artists face in the music industry? Let us know in the comments below. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe so you never miss a new video.